Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fine, aside from feeling a bit horrible today after all this freaking smoke. I was freaking just grabbing the mail in the house, and it's like, holy shit, I freaking feel out of breath.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's true. It's been a weird day in New York. As you can see, our background for today is the smoky Yankee Stadium. There will be no baseball played there tonight, as the Yankees and the White Sox were air qualitied out, I guess, if you want to say. The air quality in the surrounding area, specifically around Yankee Stadium, was one of the worst in New York State. For if you want to have a reference point, normally a normal air quality sample for our area would be anywhere between 50 and 100 on this scale that they use. Well, for me right now in my area, it's about 150, which is pretty bad. For the area around Yankee Stadium, it's about 300 right now. So it is really, really bad out there. So if you don't need to be, don't be outside. You'll get the smoky feeling. You get the burning in your eyes and everything. It's definitely not fun. I was working outside a little earlier today, and I was not enjoying it. So I'm very happy to be back home. But Dan, other than that, how are you doing, man? We definitely have a lot to talk about. How has this smoke been over by you? Has it been really bad by you too?
It's been bad. Like it looked like pretty much like you're seeing in that picture for a while. Now it's looking more on the grayish side, but it's still really bad. Like just open it. If I just have to open the door for a second, it's like that. I just had to let my sister was arriving, and I had to open the door quickly, and she had to get in very quickly. It just felt like that. So it's scary. I could tell you it's scary.
Yeah, it's crappy. It's just got that real ominous feeling. It kind of feels like one of those things in a movie before something bad happens. This is one of the omens, but you know, it's one of the crap that we're dealing with right now. As me and you were talking about, off air. I guess the only thing you can really do for this is blame Canada. So let's go back to blaming Canada and move on because there's nothing we can really do. So we just gotta bite the bullet and hopefully in the next day or two this will move on out, right, Dan?
Yeah, like now it's badly. Hopefully Canada gets a really bad rainstorm. Like they need like I cannot decide, but hopefully you get a rainstorm, get this shit out of the way. 'Cause
Yeah, you got that right.
it is scary out there. I felt like my eyes were gonna burn. Just that brief little second I was opening the door as my mother and sister were there with a friend of my mother's who would just bring they were coming home because they had brought Mr. Louis into the vet because he had had to have some suspicious removed from his eye.
Hmm.
He had to have some blue eye surgery. He's doing removed the mask, but his eyes are doing fine. But it was still scary. Like hopefully Mr. Malinigan's okay. He's at home, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's one of the
right
big
now
things too.
that's
You got to make sure you keep the pets inside.
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Believe
So
me, I'd be
we
really
got.
upset if anything happened to my. I'd be really upset if anything happened to my Malinigan.
Oh, absolutely, man, absolutely. So everybody do the right thing and keep your pets inside when you can today. And hopefully, like we said, this will be moving out in the next day or two. As you can see, man, I got that smoke pouring into my room back here, so it's already pretty smoky in here. It's pretty smoky out at Yankee Stadium, so we'll see where things stand in a couple of days. But we're already starting to see the ripple effect of all this crap coming down here because there are flights getting canceled, games are getting postponed. We got the word just a little while back, as we mentioned, that the Yankees and White Sox will not be playing tonight. The Yankees dropped the series opener 3-2 yesterday when this stuff started to roll in, and we saw Yankee Stadium kind of get surrounded in that last night. And unfortunately, they were going through all this the last couple of days without Aaron Judge. Judge ended up getting hurt in the Dodgers series against the Yankees, which, by the way, Yankees took 2 out of 3 of. So you have to tip your cap. The Yankees went out to LA, took 2 out of 3 from a very good baseball team. And, Judge is back on the IL now, man. I mean, the catch, did you see this catch that Judge made when he crashed into the fence this weekend?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
They,
and that was a
feel
hell of a catch. I mean, just from looking at it, do you think he's going to be out for a while, or is this going to be a short-term thing?
I feel like it's an unpredictable injury because it was saying he crashed into the heart. This one, I don't really know. It could be a short term, could be a long term. We won't know until a couple of days. I just know
That's
one
true.
thing: the Dodgers, not just from and from just a baseball perspective, they need to do something about that wall, about the door or something.
That's
That
a good point
that
too.
door just that door just looks like it's gonna injure the players. It just I said, who was in charge of the lock on that door at the beginning of
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too. You know, like you would think that thing would just be locked at all times, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the. You think they would take that seriously, knowing that someone go through that thing, they could get hurt.
Yeah, and I mean we know too. I mean, sure, Judge is a pretty big guy. He's 6'8", you know, north of 250 pounds. But the when the fences out there and everything should be more than capable of stopping a guy like Judge from running through it, right?
Yeah, exactly. If that thing was locked properly, probably would have no problem. Maybe a couple scrapes, just but a scratch. But now it's unfortunately Yankee fans. He's on the IL.
Yeah, and he had been killing it, man. I mean, aside from our boy Alonso, Judge had been, one of the hottest home run hitters in the game since he came back from his last DL stint. I mean, let's not forget that he was on the DL at the end of April, and now here in the beginning of June, he's on the IL, whatever you want to call it. So I mean, we're a month, we're a couple of months into this big contract for Aaron Judge, and he's already had 2 stints on the IL. So I mean, we're going to get into this injury talk in a little bit because obviously, one of our other guys, deGrom, unfortunately went down. We'll discuss that in a sec. But do you think that maybe the Yankees are starting to, be a little nervous about this $360 million they gave Judge?
I I think they are. Maybe half, somewhat not, because this one wasn't really like an injury that just some sort of freak injury. It wasn't like a big thing that affected a lingering effect from a previous injury. This is more an injury that happened during a play that just worked out the way it did.
No, you're right. You're right. But I will say this. You know, if that happens once to a player, no problem. You can definitely get that sympathy out of me that okay, maybe it's just a one-time thing. And this type of injury right now, this is a one-time thing for Judge. But he has had these freak injuries in the past. If you remember when he got hit on the hand and with a pitch, he broke his hand, and then he was out for a while with that. He also had that oblique strain a couple of years ago where he missed significant time with that. And it just seemed to keep being a reoccurrence for him. So I will say that, look, I'm not going to hold it against Judge. If he's ready to play, I'd pencil in the lineup as soon as he's ready to go. But it does worry me after you made this long commitment to Aaron Judge that these injury problems are starting to creep up again. And if you're a Yankee fan, or Yankee, front office guy like Brian Cashman type, it makes sense to worry about that kind of thing because let's be honest, the Yankees have a pretty good team, but if they don't have Aaron Judge, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So this injury is a little bit of concern. All of a sudden, they kind of wonder how much they're going to get out of this big contract.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, man. And I mean, while we're talking about these big time contracts not coming through, there's only one other guy we could talk to, and unfortunately, it's our boy Jacob deGrom, two-time Cy Young Award winner, former Rookie of the Year for the Mets. deGrom found out that he had some ligament damage, and even though Chris Young, the Texas GM, went out of his way to not say the phrase Tommy John, we both know it is. But as a matter of fact, I got I have the clip right here. Let's take a look at this clip. This is Texas GM
Jacob. He underwent further testing last night, yesterday evening. Had an MRI. The results of that MRI show that we have not made progress. In fact, we've identified some damage to the ligament, and after consulting with Dr. Meister and our medical team, Jacob is electing to have a ligament repaired. He'll have surgery next week. It's obviously a tough blow for Jacob, for certainly the Rangers, but we do feel this is what is right for Jacob and his career. We're confident he'll make a full recovery, and it's unfortunate, the way things have gone, but nonetheless, we now have clarity and can move forward and prepare to have a healthy Jacob deGrom, hopefully, sometime by the end of next season, but no promises on the timetable.
What kind of surgery is it?
It's a ligament repair to his UCL.
I'm all right. Yeah. Anytime you get told you're not going to be able to be out there for a little while, it's tough. So, but, oh man.
All right.
I went through this before, and I know what it takes to get back. So that's the goal. Go out there, rehab as the best I can, and be around to help, any way I can. We got a special group here, and to not be able to be out there and help them win, it stinks. So this is what we love to do, and finding this out, coming here,
It's tough to watch.
To be out there and helping the team, it's a disappointment. So the one thing that I kind of talked about is now we know what it is. So if anything, at least it's clear. Like if I would have got it looked at again and it was okay, we're not really sure, then where you at? You're like, okay, I'm trying to throw, I can't do it. So at least this is clear. Like we know, get it fixed and work towards coming back.
So there you have it. Like I was saying, that's kind of tough to watch when you see deGrom getting as emotional as he did there, which you can understand. The guy's been through a lot. But the one thing I did find entertaining about that clip is how general manager and former Met Chris Young did go out of his way to not say the words Tommy John. But we all know when you're going out there and you're having this ligament surgery that you're having Tommy John surgery. Even deGrom said that he's been through this before, which he had Tommy John shortly after he was drafted by the Mets. So I don't know, Dan, 6 years, 180 million or whatever it ended up being for deGrom. What's your instant reaction to this? You got to feel bad for the guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta feel bad for the guy, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. I mean, just looking at that, you probably realize these guys, it's like a part of their lives playing baseball, and they like being out there. They just it's been a part of their lives their entire life. So it's like it's tough for them to not for them to just be on the outside looking in there, wanting to be there. So you gotta feel bad for them. Plus everything just human wise, what you're going through to recover from that injury, because it isn't just an injury that affects your playing career; it affects your life.
You're very right, man.
So
And there's a guy like Jacob deGrom that we know has dealt with so many injuries. But I guess the one thing that we can look at is over his last couple of years with the Mets. I mean, let's be honest. From uh, after 2016, when he missed the last few weeks of that 2016 season, and we had Gesellman and Seth Lugo come in and fill in that rotation, and the Mets kind of went on a little bit of a run. After that, in 2017, 2018, and 2019, Jacob deGrom took the ball every fifth day, no expectation, no exceptions. There were no exceptions. This was a guy that was 200 innings, 30 plus starts, and phenomenal effort, 2 of those years being Cy Young seasons, every time out. 2020 is when everything changed because obviously 2020 changed for everybody when deGrom only had 12 or 13 starts that year, and it was not his fault. It was because of the 60-game season. He still had good numbers that year. 2021, he comes out and has probably one of the greatest first halves in the history of baseball. The guy was on a level that we've never seen before for the most part. And then after that, we get all these injuries. And ever since then, deGrom has had these little nagging injuries that pop up, and they send him for an MRI, and it comes back, and they say, well, the MRI is clean. Well, now the MRI finally didn't come back clean, and we see that it's actually a ligament problem. Let me ask you this question, Dan, because I'm sure people are going to be talking about this at some point. Do you think? I mean, and I don't want to kill the Mets over this, but do you think that maybe it's possible all those MRIs the Mets sent him for and everything that maybe the Mets missed something with all these things, and maybe there was something there? Although I guess he had to pass a physical to get signed by Texas in the first place, but it feels like it's just it's crazy that with all these signs pointing to it, that it just gets discovered now. You know what I mean?
it may have been one of those injuries that kind of doesn't show up then, but probably shows up more like later on.
Yeah, yeah, you're probably right. And yeah, man, I mean, unfortunately, we feel bad for deGrom, and it just sucks too the timing when you think about it. Now, what's the one thing that we have all talked about throughout deGrom's career? And it's not only his brilliance, but it's the Mets' inability to score for him, and how much better his record would be if the Mets just had a supportive offense. And he goes to Texas and finally has a supportive offense this year. The guy went out there and he is pitching for the team that has scored 10 runs the most. They've had, they've one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in baseball right now. And he goes out there and now he can't enjoy the benefit of finally having that offense. I mean, that's a little bit ironic, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is, and unfortunately, it does suck for him seeing that. Like, you feel bad seeing that, seeing him like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true, man. Very true. So, yeah, with that, we'll move on to the team that deGrom left. Um, our New York Mets. Where is that? Right there. As yeah, there's deGrom. Just feel bad for that guy. And now let's check out with the Mets now. And I don't know, man. I don't know what to do with this Mets team. I still have confidence in them. I still feel like if they're a move or two away from everything clicking and everything coming together. But, the ups and the downs of this season have just been ridiculous. We go from sweeping the Phillies and feeling like, oh man, this team is finally starting to click on all cylinders. Everything's finally starting to come together. And then what do? They go out and they get swept in terrible fashion against the Blue Jays, where the offense pretty much just didn't show up. They hit 4 solo home runs on Sunday. Hey guys, why don't you try to do it with a guy on base? 4 solo home runs. Last night, they lose to Atlanta. They had a 4-1 lead, blow the game. Not surprising because they've been doing that all the time recently. And they only had the 4 runs they scored came on 2 hits in a span of 3 batters. Lindor hit a 2-run shot. McNeil got on, and Alonso hit a 2-run shot. Bada bing, bada boom. That's it. That's the Mets offense for a gigantic divisional game against the defending National League East champions. So I don't know. What do you think, man? I'm fed up with this team right now. I still think they could turn it around, but we got to start seeing some consistency.
Yeah, I just feel like it. I feel like we need one more offensive move. Also, the bullpen has been hurting us the last couple of games.
Yeah, the bullpen, and you know what though? I think a lot of people, when they looked at the bullpen being impacted by Edwin Diaz going down, I think a lot of people looked at that bullpen issue as guys specifically coming into the 9th inning and blowing leads the Mets have and blowing save situations and all that stuff. Well, we really haven't seen that this year because in save situations, David Robertson and Adam Ottavino have both been pretty good this year. I think they only have 2 or 3 blown saves between the two of them. It's been the guys, it's been leading up to that. And Edwin Diaz going down, pushing these guys further down the line has really shortened up that bullpen. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these leaks. Guys like Dominic Leone and Steven Nogasek and, just the parade of guys we've seen coming in from AAA. The Mets got to get these guys. The Mets got to start bringing in some higher quality relief pitchers because even though I think you could probably get by with a guy like Drew Smith in your bullpen, who I do like, Dominic Leone and Nogasek and these other guys, that's not going to happen. Brooks Raleigh is good. He can stay in the pen, but a lot of these other guys, they got to show the door, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these guys got to show the door, right? And we're unfortunately dealt with a situation where we're with 2 relievers who probably would have been 7th and 8th if he has not been hurt. It's affecting how those middle innings are hurting us.
Yeah, and you're right about that too. The middle innings leading up to it, because one other thing that could be helping us is getting length out of our starting rotation, which, okay, it looks like maybe Scherzer and Verlander are starting to get there now. They're starting to figure it out. Kodai Senga, we've seen the best of Kodai Senga, and we've seen some pretty bad from Kodai Senga. He tried to go out there on Sunday against the Jays and, pitch on a normal 5-day schedule like most, Major League Baseball players do. And if you don't know, in Japan, they usually only pitch once a week. Here in the States, it's once every 5 days. So they tried to get him for the first time on that 5-day schedule, and it did not look good. He walked 4 or 5 guys. There was a conga line of base runners, and they ended up cashing in a couple of them, and Kodai did not look good. And if it wasn't for those 4 solo home runs, 2 of them coming off the bats consecutively from Alonso and Marte, he'd have been tagged with another loss. So I don't know, Dan. What do you? I mean, we pretty much the Mets pretty much need at least one more arm in that rotation. They need probably one and maybe even closer to 2 bullpen guys, and definitely one big bat. And I'm not talking a guy like they got last year, like Vogelback. I'm talking about a guy that's going to be a difference maker that could probably provide some protection in the DH spot to Pete Alonso, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a big bat, not a big bat.
I thought you were going to say a fat bat, but let's keep it classy. Let's keep it classy. I like it, Dan. I like it. Very true. Very true. And hey, Vogelback has had his moments. He's had a decent time getting on base, but look, I don't know. I don't know. He should not be preventing Vientos from getting in the lineup. Is what is my biggest takeaway from that, because when I looked at that lineup last night, one of the biggest things that bothered me is that both Francisco Alvarez and Vientos weren't in that lineup. Now Vientos, annoyed me. I understood not putting in Alvarez because it was Navarez's first game coming off the injured list. So I get that Buck wants to get him back in there and get him back in the flow of the game. So I understood that, but I thought that at least Vientos should have been in the lineup last night. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I really feel so. I mean, not to knock anything off the Vogelback, but just his bat looks slow.
Yeah.
It just looks that way, and I just feel you're wasting the abilities of Vientos on the bench like this. How do you even expect this guy to get into a rhythm and get to where he is? If you're just letting this guy ride the bench?
Yeah, it's true. And you
It's
know
not
what?
a good decision.
Yeah, you're right. And to even drive home that point more, if you look at it, the Mets put their lineup out again. Obviously, as we speak right now, recording this show, the Mets are about an hour and a half away from first pitch. So they put the lineup out tonight, and it's Nimmo leading off in center, McNeil batting second, Francisco Lindor batting third, Pete Alonso cleaning it up, Brett Beatty hitting fifth, Starlin Marte hitting sixth, the designated hitter, Daniel Vogelback, unfortunately, is hitting seventh. They got Kana in at 8 in left, and Alvarez hitting ninth. I don't know. If you ask me right off the bat, I would get Alvarez out of that number 9 hole. I don't know how they still have him down there. And I would get Vogelback out of the lineup. Look, I got nothing personal against the guy, but I want to see Vientos. I know Vientos hasn't, hit the cover off the ball yet, like a couple of the other guys, but what do you expect him to do when he's getting 5 at-bats a week?
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is probably, I feel like it's one of the worst decisions Buck has made since that cotton uniform decision, when he listened to during his Yankees days, when he listened to the assistant to the traveling secretary. Remember how bad of a disaster that was?
That crazy balding traveling secretary, man. Yeah, so hopefully we don't hear at some point this summer, and Alonso just split his pants.
Yeah, hopefully don't see anything like that. I'm lucky that traveling secretary that in question does not work for the Mets, as far as I know.
He might have had lunch with a couple of Mets executives one time, but he never actually got to take the job.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, we had to get that off our chest, and it's right now for the Mets, they got to get back on the winning side of things last night. It looked like at one point last night they were going to have a chance to steal one, with Carrasco on the mound, who threw pretty decent through 5 innings. But then Buck tried to squeeze a little bit more out of him, and in the sixth, it all came apart. And that 4-1 lead ended up, being a 5-4 deficit. Now tonight, Scherzer's back on the hill tonight. You got to hope you get something big out of Scherzer, because Scherzer's been on a little bit of a roll lately, and this is the type of game you need him for, man. I mean, he's even those numbers out now. They're starting to look good again. 5-2, 3.21 ERA. And he's going up against Charlie Morton for the Atlanta Braves now, who's 5-6 with a 3.62 ERA. So, I would think just based off pitching matchup, you'd have to give the edge to the Mets right off the bat tonight, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I can give the edge to the Mets tonight. Hopefully this one goes well. I'll be watching and I'll be watching in front of the TV. Hopefully I'm not upset as I'm watching TV and potentially coughing because this air is, I don't know. There's like some little areas in the house that gets some kind of little opening. Hopefully, will be as much openings in this house as close as possible because that air, it's like the coughing, the sneezing.
Yeah, it's true,
not
man.
great.
Yeah, my allergies have been like shit for the last few weeks already, and this is not making it any better. Although I'm sure all my windows are closed. I don't think that coughing is coming from the smoke, but you never know. You never know. It's all around us right now. So,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
at least the Mets are not in our area tonight, so we will at least get to see baseball. The Mets just trying to get back on track now, man. I mean, we've been saying it seems like every week we come on, we talk about how the Mets have to get back in track and have to figure things out. And one thing I will say, about our Met team right now is they're still basically 500. Okay, they're 30-31 right now. They're one game under, but they're only 5.5 out of the division. They're right there. If the playoffs ended today, the Mets would be. If the playoffs started today, the Mets would be right there in a wild card situation as we lose Bo, but he'll be back in a sec. So I think if you're going to look at all the negatives that are going on as we're rejoined by Bo.
I got knocked out. Maybe who knows what that smoke's doing to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true. But Dan, what I was saying too is that to me right now, and I know this might seem kind of confusing and not make sense right off the bat, but I think you'll get what I mean, is that this season kind of reminds me of 2015. And if you remember, the Mets got off to a pretty decent start this year before everything kind of started getting crappy in the beginning of May and everything. And they got off to a really good start in 2015 too. I forget what the record was. It was like 11-1 or something like that. They got off to a really great start in 2015. But then they ended up hitting some doldrums and they got some injuries and just things weren't going their way. They were not hitting. And if you remember, by the time the trade deadline rolled around, they were only a couple of games out of first place and they were only a couple of games over 500. So it kind of has that feel to me right now where the Mets are 500. They're not playing anywhere near the type of baseball we know this team is capable of. And they're still in it, though. You'd think with as good as the Braves are and have been, that being a 500 team right now would bury the Mets, 10 plus games out of the division. But I think it kind of has that feel to me, like if the Mets kind of hang in there, that they might be able to storm back and take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like that, and hopefully Billy Epler makes that right move that needs to be made. That's going to be the big X factor in is what we do at the trading deadline. If we make that move, that's going to put us over that hump. and
Yeah, yeah, you're
that's what got us to where to 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 uh to a World Series, even though the World Series didn't turn out how we hoped it did, but that's what got us to that point in 2015.
yeah, you're right, man. You're absolutely right. So, yeah, with the Mets right now, and to be honest too, I think one other thing we all have to remember is I don't think this is a finished team right now. Where just what you said, it's all going to come down to the moves that Billy Epler makes, and is he going to make the right moves, like Sandy Alderson made in 2015 when he brought up Michael Conforto and he traded for Yoenis Cespedes and he traded for you know pieces like Kelly Johnson and Juan Uribe and Tyler Clippard, or is it going to be more like last year where he picked up you know, um, Daniel Vogelback, or the year before where he sold out for Javi Baez. And well, even though you can't blame that one on Billy Epler, that was on the previous, um, administration, whatever you want to call it. Um, so, this is what it's going to come down to. This is where Billy Epler is going to be graded because last year on his scorecard for the trade deadline, he gets a big fat F. Right? Would you agree that last year's trade deadline was an F, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like last year the decision he made at the trading deadline did us in.
Yeah, and then you look like we just mentioned at 2015 and how that worked out for us, and even in more recent, you can look at what the Phillies did last year. The Phillies bringing in guys like Brandon Marsh and Zach Wheeler. I'm sorry, not Zach Wheeler, Noah Syndergaard, and trying to shore up their defense a little bit, bringing in a little pitching, bringing in David Robertson, the former Philly, now Met, to help them down the stretch last year. And they made all the right moves and went all the way to the World Series. Or even the year before, where the Atlanta Braves made wholesale changes, bringing in guys like Soler and bringing back Adam Duvall and getting all these bats together, bringing in Eddie Rosario from Cleveland, and everything just kind of came together, and they ended up winning a World Series championship. So, I think that's what the Mets have to do. The Mets have to have a list right now of guys that they're going to bring in to improve the defense, maybe bringing a guy to steal bases, maybe bringing a starting pitcher, bringing a power. You know what I mean? There's got to be a checklist that he's going down now to figure out exactly who he's going to set his sights on. Right, Dan?
Exactly. He's got checklists, and they got to come through at the trading deadline. It's gonna be an edge of my seat. Probably listening to a lot of sports talk radio and stuff for all the updates.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So with that, let's keep moving on over here as move on from the Mets. And we had the I was reading Vincent Mercogliano's story from USA Today earlier today. Now he covers the New York Rangers. As we know, the Rangers are still in search of their next head coach. Now, word is that an announcement could be made by the end of this week, but I'm also hearing now too that it could potentially be in the next 24 hours that the Rangers make this case for their next head coach. We know a candidate that jumped off the page at me last week apparently has already been ruled out. Larry Brooks of the New York Post brought up the potential of Patrick Waugh, former Stanley Cup, winning goaltender, Hall of Famer, one of the best of all time, um, as a potential replacement. And it looks like he is not in the running for the Rangers job. I keep hearing guys like Peter Laviolette. Um, I don't know, Dan. Is there anybody that you're specifically leaning towards right now on this coaching search?
Mm, I don't really think there's many options there on a coaching search. It's
Well, that's the
something
thing,
I
though,
don't.
that there really are a lot of options. But the thing is, though, and I know from what your perspective is, like what you're saying, a lot of these guys are retreads. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these guys have been coaches in the NHL and have been fired recently. And I don't know. I mean, do you see the one guy I still would love to see, although it looks like he's not going to shake loose, even though Kyle Dubas, like we talked about, ended up in Pittsburgh. It looks like Mike Sullivan's going to end up staying there. I would still love to see the Rangers get their hands on him. But if that doesn't end up being the case, I mean, the guy I keep seeing front and center is Peter Laviolette. Now, I like Peter Laviolette a lot. He's a Stanley Cup winning coach. I thought that it was a very stupid move when the Islanders fired him after he had a couple of very successful seasons there in the early 2000s. He won a Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes in 2005. So this is a guy that has a resume, but he hasn't really had anything that you could sink your teeth into for a few years. So if the choice ended up being Peter Laviolette, would you be behind that, Dan, or would you be a little let down?
I'd be a bit half okay and half let down. Like say, I feel it's a big question mark to remove.
Yeah, it really is, and hopefully the Rangers provide some insight into what that's going to be in the next couple of days. One name that I haven't really heard that I've been very, very surprised about, and the only reason I can think is maybe because this guy just has no interest in coaching right now, is Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz, the former Nashville Predators coach, the former Washington Capitals Stanley Cup winning coach, the former Islander coach that got the freaking Islanders to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. That's a miracle in itself. Barry Trotz, it's surprising to me that his name hasn't been brought up. What do you think about that, Dan? Would you have any interest in Barry Trotz?
I'd have no problem with Barry Trotz. He has a good reputation. I mean, he got a consecutive streak of getting his team to the playoffs. So
Yeah,
I have
that's true.
confidence. I have confidence with that coaching and contender experience, which is me, which I feel is very valuable for this next coach for the Rangers. We need a guy that has experience coaching a contender.
I totally agree. I, as much as I would like to see some new blood, because as you know, just a couple of minutes ago, I was complaining about how it's all these retread coaches who we've seen before and have been fired recently. Peter DeBoer, fucking, most of these guys for the most part. So, I don't know when I look at a guy like I look at a guy like Barry Trotz, for some reason he just jumps off the page to me, and I don't know. Maybe Drury doesn't think he can work with him. Maybe there would be some tension. Maybe Barry Trotz just doesn't want to coach. I know he settled into an advisor's role for his former Nashville Predators club, but maybe he's going to stay there. So we'll see what that deal is. There's a couple of guys, Mike Babcock, who we still haven't heard about. Maybe he could potentially be a dark horse. And also, too, the guy that we keep hearing about, that at the end of the playoffs, he's going to find out if he's been reinstated by the NHL, is former Panthers and former Blackhawks head coach, Joe Quenneville. Now, Joel Quenneville is still serving a suspension that he has from hockey because if you remember, he was part of that Chicago Blackhawks scandal with a guy who was sexually assaulted, I guess would be the term, by the video coach for the Blackhawks. And so that whole scandal ended up getting him, losing his job from the Panthers and being suspended from the NHL. So I don't know. I think the Rangers are going to want to steer clear of Quenneville because of all that. But what would you think, Dan? Would it be worth taking a shot on him?
I think that be a question mark because you don't know what kind of stigma that's going to have on a management and everything.
That's true. And also, one other thing that the Rangers would have to think about too is if you bring him in here, then not only is he going to be answering questions about how he handled that situation back then, and how he feels about it today, his players are probably going to have to answer that question too. So, do you want to expose your players to that? Do you want to have that, these questions floating around in training camp when a lot of these guys right now, or at least you hope, the focus on that Rangers dressing room better be winning a Stanley Cup, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I'd want that distracted on the players having to deal with
Yeah,
this all full season,
yeah.
especially the early part of the season. These guys want to. I
That's
think these guys need to be able to have their attention on bringing the cup back to the Big Apple.
You got that right, man. You got that right, and yeah. So with the with that, let's actually keep talking about the Cup for a sec, as this series with Vegas and Florida has been a pretty good series so far. Dan, have you seen any of these games so far?
I've been seeing those games look like a nail biter. I could imagine fans of those two teams. They're going gotta be a win out sitting in front of the TV for the fans of those teams. That perspective, what it must be like. Like,
Yeah, I mean
I
that,
know
and that. Yeah, what were you saying, Dan?
what I was gonna say because I know personally what like my Rangers are in the playoffs with that like so. I imagine how they fight for those exact. I'm expecting they're experiencing exactly that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You're 100% right about that. And for anybody that thinks that this series is over because Vegas jumped out to that 2-0 lead, just do me a favor and go back and look at all these playoff series that we've seen over the course of the playoffs in both the NBA and the NHL. And that'll just show you right off the bat that you don't know a damn thing, because the Panthers very easily could wake up. Now I know things got out of hand in the game the other night where Vegas was up. I think it was 4-2, and they ended up pulling the goalie. I forget the kid's name, who's been on fire this whole. I'm sorry, not Vegas. Florida pulled Bob Bobrovsky, and they put in their backup, and that kid got lit up, and ended up being a 7-2 game. So it was kind of a blowout. But I think we both know that the Panthers are going to come back, especially on home ice. Let's not forget the Panthers have not hosted a Stanley Cup final game since 1996. So those fans are ready, man. Those front runners who weren't even there when I was there at the end of March watching the Rangers kick their ass. Yeah, those front runner fans, they're all pumped up, and they're going to be waiting for puck to drop tomorrow night. So, what do you think, Dan? Do you think that we're going to see the Panthers come out flying tomorrow night?
I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if the Panthers won this game and made it a series. I said before this game's gonna go at least to game six. I think.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that. And I mean, let's be honest. Vegas has done a good job of making their home ice advantage work for them. They have a really great, they have a great arena out there. They have a great fan base that are really into it, even though they've only been around for a few years. So, and you actually mentioned this in the show last week that if Vegas is able to complete this and win the Stanley Cup, it'll be the first major sports championship for the city of Las Vegas. So that would be a pretty cool thing too, right?
Yeah, it'd be an interesting thing to see that how Vegas that is. it's an unknown. Like some cities we kind of, like, like the old make joke about the Philadelphia riot stuff, but this we don't really know because has never had a pro sports team before, so this would be their first championship. So it's very unknown how people will back. Which find it hard to believe that there's. I know there are all goals of like I'm only I'm only being like part of this said anyone from Las Vegas, but it's like I just always associate Vegas with mostly people there tourists that it's just hard for me to fathom a local Vegas.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that they'll have, instead of like people in Eagles jerseys going out tipping cars over as like we would be seeing in Philly, maybe we'll have like David Copperfield and some showgirls going out there and pushing over some cars and throwing some Molotov cocktails around and starting some of these riots up.
That actually sounds like a hilarious fight. Like I just kind of want to imagine Penn and Teller over celebrating or something.
Britney Spears, doesn't she have a thing out there? Maybe so she'll be tipping over some cars too.
Yeah, I think. I think I heard her residency ended or something. But speaking of Penn and Teller, I've never gotten to see them live. But that's actually on my bucket list. If I ever go to Las Vegas, I want to see Penn and Teller live at one point in my life.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see them live too. That's true. That's true. Gotta love that out there, man. And as we're coming down to the end here, let's move on real quick to the other championship series going on right now. Is the NBA Final. We see Miami and Denver. Miami came back the other night to tie the series up 1-1. Looked like Denver had that game in hand too, but not so much as Miami went out there and got things done in the fourth quarter as they've seemingly done every series in and out. Like they pick themselves up. When you think that they're down and out, this team picks themselves up, dust themselves off, and keep going. So you got to be psyched for Game 3 tonight, Dan. Right? This is shaping up to be a pretty good series, and it could go pretty deep.
Yeah, I just have a feeling Miami just looks scary. If they win this game, I think they're pretty much going to win this in 5 games. It just looks like that. If Miami wins, if Denver wins, this could go to 6 games. But I just have a sneaky feeling that if Miami wins this, they might just run away with it the next 2 games after.
You might be right about that, man. I mean, the thing about Miami too is that they have had tough series. I mean, let's just think, against the Bucks, they had to beat them in 7. They had to beat the Knicks in 6. They had to beat the Celtics in 7. So they've had a very, very long run this time. Obviously, Denver swept in the conference finals, so they kind of went on cruise control. But yeah, I mean, it's a battle-tested Miami team that's been there and they've done this. And I don't disagree with you that if things start to go right in this series, I would for Miami and like they win tomorrow, or I'm sorry, tonight now, I would very much sign for them winning. Yeah, I mean, maybe not 5 because they've had a little bit of trouble closing teams out. I mean, they weren't able to close out the Knicks in Game 5. They weren't able to close out the Celtics in Games 4, 5, and 6. So we'll see how good they can get back to closing these teams out then. But yeah, man, I agree with you that we've seen this Heat team once they get going, it's hard to get them to stop. So it would not surprise me at all if we look up and maybe they're not knocking them out in Game 5, but I can see them being up 3-1 going into Game 5, right?
Yeah, exactly. I could see them going into Game 5 being up 3-1. It just looks like that.
Yeah, it's true. Especially with the way they've played in Miami this year, they've done a great job on their home floor. And they've been a pretty good road team too. And obviously, to get this deep and this far of a run, you've got to win some games on the road too. So as they did in Game 7 in Boston in the last round. So yeah, man, definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on there. Yeah, it's tough to get to bet against Miami for me right now. So I think me and you are pretty much both on the Miami side still, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hey, we can't complain about that, man. I mean, the uh, the um, the Heat have stood up to every test, and I was thinking this before too. I haven't had a chance to look it up. I'm sure it's happened, but I wonder when the last time a obviously not a top seed because I wonder when the last time a team knocked off two number ones in the same NBA playoffs, meaning they knocked off the number one in the East and then get to the finals and knocked off the number one in the West. I wonder how many times that's ever happened. So maybe instead of just
I don't.
saying it, right? But it's an interesting question, right?
Yeah, I don't recall this ever happening. It's just. I feel like for some reason the NBA, the underdogs are over. Seem to not win that often in the NBA more than
Yeah,
any
you're
other
right.
major sport.
Like the NHL is kind of like the underdog league. If you're gonna have an underdog run, it's gonna happen in the NHL for the most part. But in the NBA, we never see that. You're right.
Yeah, I rarely see an underdog win. I think the last time I recall ever really seeing an underdog win, maybe 2004 when the Detroit Pistons beat the Lakers. That looked like
That's true.
that looked like their team looked
That's
like
very
they were
true
going to
too.
make
But
it to the championship.
and the Pistons were a good team that year, though. I mean, obviously the Lakers were on a different level with that, Gary Payton and Karl Malone team they built of all the All Stars. But yeah, I mean that Pistons team was still a good team. It's not like that. They're an 8 seed like this Miami Heat team.
The closest I could think of that. I
Yeah,
just
no, it's
remember
true
at
though,
that
man.
time
Yeah,
it just looked like the Lakers were just gonna just walk off with a blow out with a championship like during that
yeah,
time.
you're right. To be honest, actually, it almost reminds me of the '99 Knicks. You remember how the '99 Knicks had a very, very mediocre season in a strike shortened year where they only played 50 games that season. And then the Knicks just got hot and they beat the Heat in the playoffs and they ended up going all the way to the NBA Finals. And unfortunately, they lost to the Spurs with Tim Duncan and everything just starting to come into their own. But until the Knicks ran into the Spurs there, this playoff run reminds me a lot of that team because most people coming into that playoff run did not expect the Knicks to do anything.
I was like shocked. I I was I was like shocked for one thing because it just felt like every year the playoff disappointment for the Knicks, and then to see like could this possibly be it? Like you've seen that, but then once again we saw another typical history of playoff disappointment with the Knicks.
Very true, man. Very true. As we've grown to know with our orange and blue teams. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I think that's just about going to do it for us today, man. Before we get out of here, though, I think we both want to give our best wishes. Not that one. I think we're both going to want to give our best wishes to the Iron Sheik. Sheiky baby, we love you. The Iron Sheik, who we've all seen. I mean, if you're an old school wrestling fan, you remember him beating Bob Backlund. Remember, Bob Backlund held that championship for about 4 years, and the Iron Sheik kicked his ass and beat Bob Backlund for the championship. He'd go on to lose it the next month to Hulk Hogan, but that's an honor that he was the champion for that time. And the Iron Sheik, man, he was the bodyguard for the Shah of Iran when he was young. He was in the 1972 Olympics as a United States coach. This is a guy who was a legit badass aside from being a fun character as a professional wrestler. Obviously, we all also know him from his appearances on Howard Stern, where he was great on there, and Opie and Anthony, where he had a lot of fun on there. What do you remember about the Iron Sheik, Dan?
Yeah, the Iron Sheik just had that charisma of being, like being like a great heel. And the Iron Sheik was one of the greatest heels in the WWE history, and will be greatly missed by all those in the wrestling community. Of course, also a lot of Opie Yankee fans will remember that appearance on the show where we may have had a couple of one too many beverages, unfortunately.
May have had a little bit too much to drink. May have, needed to use the bathroom and didn't, unfortunately. But, hey, we're all human. We're all human. And God bless the Iron Sheik, man. The guy lived a long life and a very, very fulfilling life, I'm sure. He had a great family that stood by him for 50 years, man. So much love to the Iron Sheik. Godspeed. One of the greatest of all time. Just not even wrestler, just as a character and a man. So tip of the cap to the Iron Sheik. Wish you nothing but the best. And as for that, I think that's just about going to do it for us, Dan. Before we get out of here, do you have anything that you like to plug for yourself?
Sure, my Twitter account Bobo103NYC, my Instagram account Bobo718DK, and of course Daniel Curlin on YouTube. Will be stuff on there, and hopefully to everyone out here who's dealing with this in any of the vicinity of this horrific smoke, just stay strong. And I I know you. I know maybe on Twitter I would be stuff like, what the heck can Canada control the wildfires, but for real though, my heart goes out to people in Canada dealing with this shit, because they're dealing with
That's
the
true.
worst of it. They are dealing with the worst of it, and hopefully they by the time they get this under control. And I got to give a lot of props to the firefighters probably going, who are probably pulling out all the stops to stop this wildfire, and probably all the firefighters who are probably in other areas that are going to be pulling in all the resources. Wouldn't surprise me if it hopefully it doesn't get that bad, but if it got to the point we might have to pull some of our firefighters might have to go out there to help the, increase the numbers, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Flat out
definitely
there.
right, man. I mean, yeah, I mean, we know it could definitely take a team effort to get this thing under control, because it's definitely crazy right now. So absolutely, shout out to our friends up in Canada. Hopefully, everybody's safe up there. If you're around here right now and you're dealing with this crappy air quality, close the windows up, keep the pets inside, and hang out inside. Heat up a frozen pizza or something. Just take it easy for the night. Let this crap pass over the next day or two, and we should get back to blue skies and good weather very soon. Right, Dan?
Exactly. And also, if you're buying any takeout, please tip your delivery drivers extra for having a delivery in this storm.
Exactly. Don't be a cheapo. Give them a couple of bucks. They deserve it. Running around in this crap. So yeah. So and also too, before we get out of here, if you want to check us out on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. We're almost up to 500 subscribers on there. We're hoping to get there soon. Um, you can follow us at Best Seat in the House Podcast on there. You can check us out at Best Seat in the House Podcast on Instagram, and also check us out at BSith_podcast on Twitter. You can check me out on Twitter. Also, my last name Cramer NY. So, hey, once again, thanks everybody for tuning in and spending a couple of minutes with us here on Best Seat in the House. As always, I'm Rob Cramer, and this is my co-host Daniel Bobo Curlin, and we'll catch you next week on the Best Seat in the House podcast.